been married for quite a while. Got a bunch of kids doing faith in style. They'll tell you that you're awesome and you're not alone. So let's start the show. Who knew Catholics could be so much fun? Greg and Jennifer and how faith is done. Screwing up and trying and forgiving. Adventures in imperfect living. Adventures in imperfect living.
Greetings, folks. I'm Greg Willits from RosaryArmy.com.
And I'm Jennifer Willits, his wife.
Welcome to the program. Glad to have you with us for another edition of Adventures in Imperfect Living. Thanks to all of you who have started following us on YouTube. We're now doing simulcasts of most of these things. I still have to figure out how we're going to do a simulcast when we go to interviewing guests again, because that's going to be a new technological skill for me to be able to incorporate Zoom or whatever I'm going to use. But thank you to those of you who are watching on YouTube, who have subscribed, hit the like button, and notifications and all that stuff that YouTube tells you to do, as well as subscribe to the audio version if that's your preferred way of consuming the program, wherever you're getting it, whether it be Spotify or Apple Podcasts or whatever it is. It's really been a busy month technological-wise, and just getting the ball rolling right out of the gate for all the things that we're trying to do for Rosary Army right now. It's been pretty amazing how much we've gotten done in just a few short weeks, but at the same time I have this, time is going so fast, and I'm not getting nearly as much done as I feel like I need to be getting done. And
Greg,
and suddenly it's going to be December, and we're going to be doing the giving campaign again.
It's going to be okay. People are so nice. We have some of the best supporters in the world.
I am not one of them, though.
Are so kind and so patient, and they know that we are real people. That yes, we take producing content quite seriously, but they also know that we need to rest, and it's important for a creator, especially, to have periods of silence, periods of just thinking, just processing, or just absorbing something that they just heard. That's critical to the creatives or the introverts. And in this case, you're both. So I'm glad. I'm really proud of you yesterday that you declared a day of thought.
Well, but
that was yesterday.
It still didn't turn out that way. I mean, I declared a day of thought, meaning I didn't want to record anything. I wanted to get more audio editing done. We've recorded a whole mess of PSA radio commercials for Rosary Army that will be airing on EWTN and other Catholic radio. But I didn't hardly get any of that done. It was, I tried to answer. So
what'd you do?
I tried to answer
Confess.
I tried to answer emails. I did try to get some organization stuff going, but I just kind of felt like I was moving files. It was just, no, here's one thing I did do yesterday. And so, again, see, I really wish I can remember so many things, but I forget what I do, right? I forget the work that I get accomplished. And yesterday, for example, until you just said that, I totally forgot that I hired Ben Barron, which is another new thing for me, to trying to outsource, trying to trust other people to take our media and do things to it. But we had talked, so Ben Barron is the son of our good friends, Mac and Catherine. He is, we've talked about him. He's been super helpful with the studio and getting things going. And he likes editing video as well. And I would go to our son, Walter, but Walt's so busy. He's a video editor for LifeSite News. And so he doesn't want any more work. Walt's like, no, Dad, you're on your own.
And I think it's better that we don't always go to our child for stuff. It's like, we don't want to risk botching the parent-child relationship by incorporating employee-employer in there.
It's better to botch that relationship with our friends.
So much better
and our friends' children to do that.
To crush the dreams of another child that doesn't belong to us.
So
it's great.
I have this thing. It drives me nuts when people go to record video and you see people walking around and they're holding, I don't have my phone with me right here.
I do. But I have my phone.
They walk around with their phones in vertical position, right? And so they're filming like this. And this bothered me for years because my thinking has always been that video is all video that's online is going to move to people watching it on their television. So you hold it in the same direction as your TV, right? And so that when people stream it, it's like that. So you're not watching TV with like this rectangular box in the middle of it that's really annoying. You don't want that. And so
to us, that was always the mark of an amateur.
Right.
Quite honestly, it's like, oh,
it was. It's
that
like,
poor fella. He recorded it vertically, didn't he?
Really?
Look at those little sidebars off to the side,
Even
of
when
your video.
I'm doing FaceTime with someone. I'm like, can you please please respect me enough to turn your phone into the horizontal position so that we can be more professional?
I mean, this is how all things should be recorded. As if we're all cinematographers, everything's designed for the big screen, which is horizontal.
So what does the world do to us? They make things like YouTube stories and Instagram stories and Facebook stories a very popular thing, so that people can lessen their attention spans even more, so that they could become even more idle in their ways and just watch one 30 to 50 second video over and over again. So what are we doing? We're going to support that. We're making them now. Because we're finally giving in. Well, we realize it's like, listen, if we're going to evangelize, if we're going to use the technologies that are available, again, this is what St. Maximilian Kolbe would do. He used whatever technologies were available to him. He used whatever modern printing presses, whatever modern communications, radio, whatever was available. That's how he evangelized. And so we're trying to do the same kind of thing. We're not doing it by hitting people over the head. But we are trying to do it in an interesting way. Why are you
thoughts.
Why are you mulling?
I have thoughts. I think it's interesting to just assume St. Maximilian Kolbe would use the technologies
he told me.
Today.
He told me.
I wonder, can we get him on the phone? I wish there was some way we could say, all right, you can see everything from heaven. Like, look at all this mess we got right now. We got AI going on. We got like all these listening devices in our homes that we do to ourselves. Would you use that? Like, at some point you have to ask, is this the game you want to play? So I don't know.
Hold on. We're going to get to some, because we have some feedback
from
the last show about artificial intelligence and where the line is and where the line isn't. And I also want to clarify something I said last week, because when I heard it, I was like, oh, that sounded...
You said it harsh?
No. Oh. It sounded like we'll get to it.
Okay. Don't forget.
I want to finish, though. But so I experimented with the show a couple weeks ago, and I just made like 5-minute long segments of our conversations without a lot of editing. I literally went in and said, this is the beginning of what we said that was interesting, and here's the end of it. And then I started to put those up on YouTube, on Rosary Army's YouTube channel, just to see, does that make any sort of movement in terms of more viewership and people paying attention or sharing it or whatever. And so then I started realizing maybe I'm going to have to do the stories thing, which is just it's new, and it makes me feel old is what it is, because I don't sit there and I can't sit there and just scroll through these stories, but I know that they're beneficial. And every once in a while when I do scroll through them, I do see at least one thing that I'm like, oh, that was pretty funny. Okay, I can move on with my life now. And if we can just get people's attention of the excitement we have about being Catholic and the excitement about the Rosary, and even if it's because it's some random thing that we say, I'm fine with that. But you had said, well, it'd probably be better if we had someone of Ben's age, 20 years old, trying to decide what was actually funny, and it could be at our expense, because we may have said something that we didn't realize was funny, but to a 20-year-old, they're like, oh, these
old yokels.
Yeah, we're not boomers, but these Gen X people. It's like, that. Yeah. So I told Ben, watch it. We're going to pay him to watch the video, which that's so weird to me. It's so weird that we're paying someone to watch the video. Watch the video and find the segments that you think would be that you as a 20-year-old that you'd want to see if you were scrolling through YouTube stories. And so he found 3 already, and he found 3 more. And so that's what we did yesterday. And so that was a lot of work.
Can we stop and just pause on that? He found 6 total nuggets that
that we said
that spoke to him as a 20-year-old.
Well,
that's pretty good.
We can't say it spoke to him as much as he thought that they could speak to somebody, whether it was him,
somebody else,
whether it was him or someone else, we don't know. So he found these, and so I did he edited it, and he and I went back and forth. And so this is how yesterday was, right? So it's like I did piddly stuff yesterday, but it was important piddly stuff. So like I designed an end screen. He came up with an idea of what it could be like. I was like, well, let's try this instead. And so I redesigned that, a little animation and that, just silly stuff. I say it's silly, but it's like you can't put out the videos without having these things in there. So you got to spend the time to do it. And so I got that to him. He re-edited these 3. And then last night I uploaded them, or yesterday afternoon I uploaded them, and I scheduled them. I love these kinds of experiments, but they also terrify me a little bit because it's like if they don't go well, it's intermittent scheduled failure.
Poor Greg. You terrify way too easily.
It's just because I've paid the price of my own creativity from time to time. So I put out one of these videos around 3:00 yesterday afternoon, another one around 6 yesterday afternoon, and then another one I scheduled to go live at 6:00 this morning. And so just these 3, and one of them was about our just a brief part of our AI discussion from last week, where we were showing that weird Marvel MCU artificial intelligence designed images. And so Ben edited that to make that image pop up on that and put that out there. And so we called that like, "Are you afraid of artificial intelligence?" Another one was, "Do you have a Catholic plan?" where we're just talking about, going to confession or something like that. And then the last one was focused on, help me out here, because I'm
quick death.
Oh, quick death, having a quick death when we talked about having the tree fall on us. So all the stuff from last week's show, he just was taking segments and putting them in the vertical orientation and making 50-second snippets, and he cut it up so that it looked like you and I were talking more back and forth to each other. And so it was interesting to look at. So now I want to know the analytics, and so I'm paying attention to this and put it out there. And within an hour, we had some views, and I had no idea how YouTube was going to start putting these out there. I don't know their algorithm, right? I don't know their artificial intelligence. I don't know how they're trying to take over the world and consume our existences.
Well, this morning I just opened up my computer, have my cup of coffee ready, and I'm just going to check my initial emails that were fresh for the day. And all of a sudden, I got a notification with one of those shorts. It just like recommended it to me.
Yeah, it was YouTube's narcissistic algorithm.
Yeah, it's like you want to see you, don't you?
You want to see yourself.
I guess.
Yeah, I
sure.
do. Yeah, click play. So, interestingly, the first one I put out, the one that had the thing about the AI. No, the first one was Catholic Plan. The Catholic Plan one got about 450 views, since yesterday afternoon. The one that went out at 6 p.m., think about it. People are leaving work, so they're not goofing off anymore. They're going home to be serious about their lives. That one got about 250, 300 views. But the one that went out this morning at 6 a.m., and that was the one about a quick death. And I don't remember how I titled it. It was like, I want to...
Yeah, quick death, I think.
I want a quick death or something like that. In 3 hours, that one had almost 2,000 views. And I don't know how that happens. And I don't understand that.
Okay, well, think about it. At 6 a.m., people are waking up and getting ready for work, but they always grab their phones to see what they've missed from the previous night.
And start watching YouTube?
I think so. If you think about it, that's when they're scrolling to look at what they may have missed.
These kids these days always scrolling at 6 a.m. when you should be brushing your teeth.
I really think that's happening between 6 and 7:30 a.m. So that might be the statistic to pay attention to, is the habits of people in the morning are going to be they're grabbing for their phones. I mean, do you not grab for your phone within the first hour of waking up?
Within the first hour, yeah.
Yeah. But 6 p.m., there's way too much activity, multitasking, people leaving. They're just not as able. They're more in the car, not really looking at a video for the 6 p.m. So I would think the 6 p.m. launch would have the smallest viewership. That's my opinion.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Well, obviously, I mean, I don't plan on launching another one at 6 p.m. Mm-hmm. My problem is a lot of times I launch these things at inopportune times, whether it be newsletters. By the way, you can get the Rosary Army newsletter, so you can get up-to-date information by going over to Rosary Army and click on one of the subscribe buttons, or I'm going to start putting a link in the show notes. So if you go to the show notes for this episode, including on YouTube, there'll be a link so that you can jump over and subscribe to Rosary Army's newsletter. But all of these things that are consuming our focus, I don't know. It's enough talk about the YouTube thing, but we're doing experiments and we're getting a lot done, but I tend to forget what we're doing. I'm trying to write it down. I'm glad I keep my to-do list in Notion, because then I can go back and look at what did I actually accomplish. My therapist says that. He says, "Did you ever go back and actually look at your done list?" I'm like, never. I never do that.
Interesting. But I do want to talk about this for a moment, about what you remember and what you can't remember. Because
Me personally, or people in general?
I think it's so fascinating, because one of your well-known attributes to me is your powerful memory especially associative memory. Like you remember details from the past, like crystal clear, like as if it just happened to you, but you can't remember the person's name that just introduced himself to you. And so it's like your brain is maybe selectively deciding that's not really important to me. I'm going to forget this. This could come back and haunt me in the future. I'm going to remember this.
I'm like Tom Hanks in that old Saturday Night Live skit, Mr. Short-Term Memory. Remember that?
No, I don't.
You don't remember that?
No. I forgot.
Many times in the 80s when he would host, he had a bit that he would do. And he did it like 2 or 3 times. Like, he's Mr. Short-Term Memory. He got hit by an apple tree. And it's like, and then conk. And then there's like, so he's like on game show, on Jeopardy or whatever, Celebrity Jeopardy. And Tony Randall comes out. It's like, but it's really Tony Randall. He goes, "You're Tony Randall." He goes, yes, I am. Oh, good to be here with you. He's like, "Oh, can I have your autograph?" "Well, let's do the game." It's like, "Oh, okay, yeah. Wow, this is amazing." And he's, he turns to the host and then he turns back and goes, "You're Tony Randall." It's like, he forgets about it like that quickly. Tony's like, "Yes, I am. Would you like an autograph?" He goes, "What, do you just walk around offering people autographs?" It's like, it was a great little bit that they did. And yes, I definitely feel like Mr. Short-Term Memory from time to time
that's one of your things.
That worries me too.
Wow.
That scares me because Alzheimer's is a part of my family bloodline. And I don't want to use the word terrified now that you said I'm terrified about a lot of things, but I'm highly
concerned.
I'm highly concerned. I always have been highly concerned.
Yeah.
I wrote about that in my Tied Knots book, which is no longer available.
Okay, well, I will tell you this. One activity that you do that I absolutely think is super healthy for you
I know what you're going to say.
is, oh, really?
I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I kind of want to hear what you think I'm going to say.
Oh, now I'm doubting it's what I thought it was going to be.
When you paint.
Oh, okay.
Were you going to go there? Okay, no.
No, I'm glad I didn't say what I thought you were going to say.
Because when you're painting, you're using certain parts of your brain that is ultimately relaxing. It's like it's a real, true activity. You're having a real encounter that is based on a series of truths. You have real paint in your hands, real canvas. Everything is touch, and you're making decisions. It's like such a healthy activity. When you're on the computer, though, it's a whole different activity that I think ultimately is super draining. It's a depleter of all depleters, and it leaves you more emptied out. Whereas I would hazard a guess the painting does not have the same powerful draining effect.
It does drain me. It tires.
It's tiring. I'm
tiring.
sure there's a different kind of exhaustion. Like, okay, I've done enough, and then you pull back, you stop. Yeah. But in the act of it, I think it's probably something more relaxing for you. There's a piece that goes with it. Same thing when you're doing Liturgy of the Hours. You have the actual book most of the time, like 99% of the time. You're pulling the actual physical book, and you're reading. You're actually turning the pages. All the physicality that is associated with those activities, I think, are really, really good for the brain. And the digital world, I mean, yeah, I get it. It's a shiny toy. It's super convenient. It's great, but there is a huge cost for playing with the digital stuff, and I think that is contributing perhaps to the overall depletion that you are experiencing. So whenever you feel it, you got to just back away and do some in real life activities where there is more of a, I guess, analog is the opposite of digital. What's the opposite of digital?
No,
okay, more
analog.
Physical. When you make a rosary, you're doing something really physical, and those are like touchstones to who you are with God. Like there's a greater ability to touch God through those hands-on things that we don't necessarily feel when we're looking at a screen. Does that make sense?
It does. And that actually is a great jump over point to some of the feedback that we received after last week's show when we talked about artificial intelligence. Our friend Angie, who is longtime listener supporter of Rosary Army and our podcast efforts and everything else, she left some comments over on our Discord. And by the way, we're going to be transitioning some of our Discord stuff and some of our Patreon stuff over to School of Mary very, very soon. So we'll give you more updates on that. I'm actually going to be sending a video to our patrons probably in the next couple of weeks to give them an update on what they can be doing, because we want to make sure that everyone stays involved and is experiencing what we have in store, because I think it's going to be a great transition for everyone, and a lot of fun and a lot of knowledge and a lot of faith-based growth is going to happen. But she left this message over on our Discord in regards to the AI comment. She said, "I've been trying to avoid AI. I know it's been used in algorithms and probably other things I'm not aware of, but yesterday YouTube suggested one of the AI-generated 1980s dark fantasy format films it created. She's talking about like the one that we talked about last week, the MCU. They've done it for a whole bunch of different ones. They've done like a Hobbit, and I mean, there's a mess of them out there now. She says it looked true to the brief for what it was to make, and at first I thought it was a real movie I had missed. It was a Legend of Zelda Majorca's Mask mock-up, which our kids would probably love to see this. I did not look up the ones you mentioned, so I don't know if YouTube is recommending this in a mock-up based on popularity, overhearing you speak about it from one of my devices listening, or just because that's something they are promoting. The mock-up had a bit of uncanny valley effect with some of the faces, but the images looked good and almost similar to actors I've seen before. Creepy. And I know what she's talking about, because you're looking at some of these pictures and you're like, they look vaguely familiar, but they're not really the people. It's like this, it's a morphing of reality, almost like we are truly living in our own multiverse of madness right now. She goes on to say, I know it's the in vogue thing that people have interest in just because it's new and novel, but I wonder about the Pandora's box we are opening. I know there is no going back, but how widely are we seeking to incorporate AI into our lives? Movies and series have already been created about AI being used as companions or assistants in our daily lives. She mentioned Blade Runner, Humans, Megan, and many others. In a time where humanity and community is already under attack in our culture, I don't want to participate in things that further remove and separate us from our Creator, our God, our Father. I don't want to be an alarmist pointing at the devil under every rock, but this seems like something to be weary of. Unnatural, disordered, not to mention man creating a learning being seems like us grasping at being our own God again.
Okay.
I just don't like it. Not for me, she says.
I really like her introducing the word unnatural, because in our Catholic faith, we are trying to stay rooted in not just the natural, but the supernatural, because God is above the supernatural. And we need to remember that's where he is. And this unnatural realm, while it looks so beautiful and it promises to give us convenience, I think we have made convenience into a God. And very quickly, I have memories from that really great Pixar animated film from many, many years ago. I think it's called with a little robot. There's no words, WALL-E. And you think about how they have portrayed the humans in the second half of the film. They were all overweight on these little floating barges, and they'd have these sippy cups with their Slurpees in it, because they almost kind of have predicted what we are doing now. We're laying down more. We want everything at a push of a button now. We are becoming those people from the Pixar movie from like 15 years ago, whenever it came out. I'm like, and when we saw it then, we're like, oh no, what a gross exaggeration of the future. We'll never do that. And look at how often we are doing it, because everything is convenience. No, don't get up. You can have an app do that for you. You can have this do that for you. And we have unknowingly embraced weakness. We're like, yeah, I'm tired, but whatever, I'm just going to be weak and be okay with that. And I don't know, that's highly disturbing. I was scrolling through, not scrolling, wrong word, because I don't really scroll anymore. I was looking up what was a Russian starret. I'm not even sure if I'm saying it starret or starret. And I was unfamiliar with this term. I didn't know what it was. And I was like, I have to look this up. So I'm typing in the correct spelling.
Well, how do you spell it?
Starret is S-T-A-R, okay, just like star, E-T. And then you just put Russian in front of it. And so, but I'm typing it in Google as my search platform, and it kept auto-correcting me to Russian state. I'm like, no, delete, starret. And it kept wanting to flip me to state, and it switched it over to the word state right before I hit submit or begin searching. So I didn't get anything on Russian starets, but I did get a whole mess of responses for Russian state. And one of the first articles it returned for my search was, here's what Russia is doing for their children. And they have them all in soldier uniforms, and they're all like super disciplined. And you basically were looking at a field of children, boys around the age of 10, all like military people. And I thought, wow, what a difference. If you look at the 10-year-olds in America, they're probably on video games, looking at their parents' phones or their own phones, because many of them already have their own phones by then. And they're all just kind of, a very different kind of child looking at those children in Russia, and they were ready for war. They are like taking the methodology of the Greeks from the ancient Greek world, where they believed in teaching children how to fight. So by the time they're 18, they are a seasoned, hard warrior fighter, but they started in the youth of the child. And that's a very different idea. It was very confronting, very scary to see that. And I was just trying to look up, what the heck is a Russian Starret? So anyway, once I was freaked out by that article, I did look up and see what a Russian Starret actually is. It's their version of a hermit.
Okay.
According to the Russian Orthodox, Eastern Orthodox religion, it's the elder who is wise, and he lives in a more seclusive lifestyle, but contains a lot of religious wisdom. And he is sought after for people looking for guidance. And anyway, I thought that was really frightening how this world is working, and I can't even remember why I went on that. Why the Starret? Why did I even go there?
I don't know, but going back to Angie's email with some of the things that she was saying, that
it was Angie. Angie, you did this. So you put me over there.
I responded, and I also touched on some of the things I said last week. That I for example, we talked about how Jordan Peterson ran an algorithm using ChatGPT, and he just wanted to see what kind of response it was going to give in terms of things that his writing style and how well could ChatGPT mimic that. And I did a similar experiment, and I talked about this one book that I've been working on for a long time, the 15 Promises of the Rosary, that we want to give away, and could it assist me in some way? Now, we got feedback from listener Chris in Minnesota, and he sent an email, and he said, one word, ghostwriter. And it really got me thinking, right? So you're right that it is, we don't want to, the creativity side of things is so important, but we also live in a world, whether we like it or not, most of us don't like it, where we are separated, where we don't have access to some things that we used to have, but we have more access to other things. We have a lot of access to more convenience. We have a lot of access to automated things. We can have things delivered on the same day in some cases. 20 plus years ago, I was a part of a small writers group that I met with every Monday, and I had a group of writers that I could brainstorm with, and I could add, I could read my stuff to them, and they would give me input and feedback. It's hard to find those kinds of things. I've been searching for another writers group for years. When we were in Indiana, I started going to one, but to find the right people that fit in with you and have the right types of, it started to be where when I was going to a writers group, if I share any of my fiction, the people in my groups, they would say, oh, those people should be, having sex together. They should be, and I'm like, suddenly I'm defending myself and my own sensibilities and things that I do and don't want to do, versus can we focus on the art of it all, right? And so I said, I like the idea of, and how I have been treating AI is as a ghostwriter. I'm not looking to turn all of my work over to it, but it has helped me to brainstorm and process through things. I don't want to highly defend it, but I'm experimenting with it, and at the same time, I'm like, okay, so what are 10 things that I can write about when I have already sort of maxed out my own thinking? Just asking, what are some other things? How can I paraphrase this? How can I, when I try to rewrite something, when I'm trying to come up with a description for the show or something like that, and I put in all the bits, coming up with the narrative prose for it, that has moved from being a creative effort to that is work that taxes me and keeps me from being able to be creative. And so, I understand the hesitancy with some of the AI. Mm-hmm. So I shared some of that. It's like, I'm not saying that this is that it's all good, right? And I actually said something on Discord, kind of playing into a conspiracy theory type thing, and it's not a conspiracy theory. This is just a feeling I've had. I feel like the last 3 or 4 presidential elections, I'm always very confused how we end up with the candidates that we end up with, because I'll have conversations with people on both sides of the fence, Democrat, Republican, and even independents. And you'll hear support and groundswell support behind certain people, and then those people never seem to quite win the primaries. And so then we end up with these candidates that no one really wants. And then we have the same conversation every 4 years of like, well, it's the lesser of two evils. But early on in the primaries, we had people that like are doing exactly what we want people to be doing in Washington, and they're never getting through, despite the fact that everyone's talking about them. And it's a weird thing, and it never sits right with me. It always feels like it's going in one direction, and then suddenly, and my point is it always, I'm not saying this is what happens, but I always walk away feeling like there's strings being pulled beyond our control, and really it just feels like we're going through the primary seasons of voting, and it doesn't matter. I feel like the decision is often made before we even get to it. And I know that sounds...
Wow, you sound like one of our kids. They're like, why should I vote? It doesn't matter.
Because sometimes it does, right? Yeah. Because sometimes it does matter. And sometimes we can affect change, and sometimes we can push it. And it's really, we talk about the Catholic Church being like a cruise ship where it takes a long time for it to pivot. Government's the same way, right? It took us 50 years to have Roe versus Wade overturned. It took a long time for that to happen. And that was the result of having a lot of, quite honestly, smaller level people elected in, and then having an effect over time. And I bring that up because with AI, I feel like there's this fear that it's going to start controlling everything. And I get it because of that concern I already have that certain things are already controlled. If you think about it, how you're driving around right now, how many Teslas do you pass in the course of a day? Well, what's Tesla operating off of? A good part of it is off of artificial intelligence. It's learning how to drive. It's sending off traffic information to a central location. It's it's learning as it goes. It's pivoting how it's going to be doing automated driving and how it does assisted driving and all that. That's AI. We're surrounded by it on the streets already. We're surrounded by it in so many different ways, and that doesn't excuse it. But one thing that I said on Discord is that I'm not overly hopeful that the Catholic Church is going to be fast in responding to this. But I feel like we really do need to have a consortium of sorts of Catholics that are banding together and talking about what are more philosophical and moral implications of this, because it's here, and how are we going to work with it, knowing it is there, it exists. And so if we pretend that it's something I don't like, and therefore I'm not going to have anything to do with it, I don't know if that's possible. So because then it goes right back to the argument of like, so do you not buy anything from Amazon because they're selling something that you find offensive? Do you not go to the bookstore and buy a book because they're selling something offensive? You can find something that goes against your morality in anywhere you go, anywhere you purchase something, anywhere you eat. You're going to find some level of opposition to your Catholic belief. Now, we know as Catholics that we are not supposed to be of the world. We're in the world, but not of the world. And so we are supposed to be living separately. I genuinely spent some time yesterday. You asked me what I did. I spent some time praying specifically about this, because after I got some of the feedback and after the email, and even just listening to the own disturbances in my heart of where are things right now, right? And how are things? And I had to stop and think of the sheer volume of work that we're trying to do right now and everything else, that I see validity in some of it, of using some of it. I plan to still keep using some of it. But I am not going to let it take over my creative endeavors in any way. I will use it, though, for, like, I don't like writing summaries of things, right? I don't like writing descriptions for YouTube. I don't like even summarizing my own chapters in fiction or something like that. If I can highlight a chunk of text and say, summarize this, and it goes poof, and there it is, I have no issue with that. I really don't. Now, is it going to use that information now that it has consumed my own stuff and it's going to become my internet overlord? I don't know. But then that brings us back to how are we going to live? Are we going to live in fear, or are we going to live in the peace of God and know that no matter what happens, even if it's a Robo-Apocalypse or its sequel, whatever, I already forget the name of it. I actually found out there was a sequel to Robo-Apocalypse, the book, which was okay. But I might read the sequel. That no matter what your fears are, in the end, God has it. I mean, in the end, God has it. In the end, God has it. And so how much do we live in fear, and how much do we consume it? I'm not saying you have to go and use AI, But I also think there's a certain danger in starting to position it as it's all evil, it's all bad, I'm not going to do anything, because then there's kind of an association that you're calling someone else all evil because they do find value in it and because they're using it. So, I would feel terrible if someone's like, AI is evil. Well, I'm using AI in some cases, so does that make me evil by association, right? And then there's a danger there, right? There's a danger in becoming this hyper-vigilant type of individual. Angie went on and she said, the idea of AI, and this was in response to my comments, she said, we all wonder if the person or program made the production. That's been introduced now, because I also made the comment of, like, I read an article yesterday morning and I went, this sounds like it was manufactured by artificial intelligence. It did not. It felt like someone said, write an article about this celebrity that did this thing, and it just spit it out with like some details about past productions they did, and it was a weirdly written article. And she says, but it's been introduced. The doubt has been introduced, and now we will all wonder if the person or the program made the production. She says it's just a matter of time before it's indistinguishable. And I suppose that it is.
I see it as a bit of a threat to writers, a threat to artists, because once it gets really good, once it has learned what it needs to learn artificially, it will eclipse the human. And
I don't know if it will.
And it could be financially advantageous to the one who's trying to create a larger project. Like you look at movie companies, and they're like, well, if you can artificially make a movie, which you just have to know that probably is going to happen now. They just have to try, just have to see, would people like to see a movie this way that was made by just a couple of programmers who manipulated AI to do the whole thing? Could it happen? Could it even make up the voices? So that there's very little human anything in it. And then how much does it cost and how popular it is? And if people go pay to see it, well, there you go.
But
now you've got it. Financial viability.
That financial viability aside, and there still is this sense of you're going to be able to. AI will never be able to replace heart.
True.
And as humans, we will be able, I believe, to see the heart of things. AI could generate text that is actually moving. But I feel like there's a connection that God has given us as a part of the body of Christ that will never be able to be mimicked.
And that's like in a mystical way. Like it was written in our hearts by our Creator. And so, right, I mean, I think about what God has given us. He has given us intelligence. And oftentimes when I go to confession, and after I've confessed my sins, a lot of times a priest, well, not always, but often, he will offer wonderful guidance customed to me and my problem. And he will say, God gave you intelligence. Use the intelligence God gave you. And so when I hear that, I'm like, okay, I have intelligence. I just have to use it. And if I don't use it, then I'm going to suffer a consequence for that. So when I see things like artificial intelligence, okay, I get that it can have some legitimately good things about it. Like I like the summarization tool that it can provide. I see that is a benefit. And I don't see any moral culpability with that particular usage.
In the brainstorming aspect of it too, which is why I brought up the writers group earlier, because they help me brainstorm, right? I don't have that access now. I can sit there and brainstorm, come up with this idea or this idea, and here's 5 things. I'm like, they're all trash, But I'm the human making final decisions on the other end of it.
And so I just wanted to put that out there, like depending on who you are and how you feel about artificial intelligence. And that is, don't forget, you have intelligence too. Please use that first. And if all else fails, then maybe, dabble just a little bit, but still, I'm a little more skittish.
Well, I feel like Angie said some other good points too. She says, I can see some advantages it will allow and invite. I just wonder to what end. But here's the parts that I really liked what she said. Time is the true gift of God, the way we learn and experience through exploration and curiosity. In our Bible study the other night, one of the ladies said, can you imagine the joy and delight that God must feel when we finally grasp what he's been guiding us to, when we finally come to a conclusion he's been guiding us to, when we finally learn the lesson, when we get the inspiration he's been sending? What will we lose when we stop exercising this? Having that creative dialogue with the Creator. The letter John Paul II wrote to artists had to speak on this on a much deeper level than I can, but I think we are intended to take the time and practice what it takes to create, and I fully agree. Cut out the shortcuts. I fully agree, right? I look at it from a work-based perspective, though. If I have work I need to do, that's where AI has been the most of benefit so far. I'll just say that. Spend time with Him, with God, in productive and creative matters, as all our labor should be offered back to Him. I agree. So what if it allows you more time to do more? Is that what He wants? Or spending the time to see you create for Him, with Him, ultimately by Him? And yes, I intended to say it could be so easily corrupted for evil's sake, like all else, intentions matter or lack thereof. I'm not fully a tinfoil hat and pointing evil under the rock kind of person, but I do think we should be thinking, reasoning, rational, thoughtful people. Knowledge and wisdom are not the same thing, absolutely. A tool like a car and autocorrect are not the same as asking your bot to write a book for you in your voice, but not of your hand. The gift is of the labor. And that's the part that made me, when I read that, I was like, that made me think about what I said last week in regards to that. I want to make sure that it's clear. I'm working on books, and they are of my own hand. They are of my own writing. I merely used them as experiments to see what the AI could do in terms of mimicking it out of my own morbid, I suppose, curiosity of that. So great feedback on this. One other thing that came up this week, and again, it ties into the whole internet galactic overlord nature of things, and by and large was the company in Wall-E.
Wall-E.
I saw a thing the other day.
That's a great name. By and large.
I didn't realize that it had showed up earlier. Even like supposedly there was a mention of it or something in the very first Pixar movie, Toy Story. Someone posted, like, who is the worst villain in all of the Pixar movies? Was it Syndrome from The Incredibles? Was it Zurg from Toy Story? It's like, no, it's by and large was the worst villain because they destroyed the planet.
Yes.
And so one of the things, it's hard not to look at some of these huge conglomerates in the world, like Amazon, like Walmart, without seeing these huge conglomerates trying to take over the world.
And why is that? Because we love to consume. We love it.
And we love the convenience of things, too. I mean, I'm very guilty. It's like many of the things in the studio were purchased from B&H Photo or from Amazon because it was super easy to go onto their website and say, I need this, 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 this. 3 days later, I had it arrived, versus driving into downtown Atlanta, fighting traffic, going into a store, waiting for a salesperson to help me.
And then they may not even have what you need.
And it's an hour away, and there's no place near me where I could buy some of the stuff that I needed. And so the whole idea of Amazon, we go back and forth on this as well. And for those of you who are listening right now, the sound you're hearing, of course, is Jennifer refilling our coffee cups. Thank you. Okay. And with Amazon this week, they actually sent out messages to many people that they were discontinuing their Amazon Smile program, which Amazon Smile, they've done it for several years, where people could go to smile.amazon.com, put in their favorite charity. So many of you have gone in and entered in Rosary Army. And as a result, Rosary Army would get a check for a few $100 every year.
Actually, I did the report.
Over all time or over on a yearly basis?
Per year. I did like the last 3 years, like so I can average out how much Rosary Army made.
So the way it worked is people would go in there, and whenever they make a purchase, it would not cost them any additional money, but Amazon would donate to their charity of choice based upon their purchases.
0.05%. I mean, it's a tiny little sliver, but it does add up when you look at all the people who have selected your charity. And let me tell you, Rosary Army was one, but schools, parishes, a lot of organizations have been benefiting off of smile.amazon.com.
Our parish just this past week put a message in the bulletin saying, hey, we're now on smile.amazon.com. So put in our parish in there. And so it's like, well, no longer.
I mean,
because Amazon basically sent out an email saying that they're doing away with this program.
Yeah, next month. Just in February of 2023. It's like, wow, not a lot of warning. I would have thought maybe 6 months warning.
So how much did the purchases of everyone bring in to Rosary Army to help on a yearly
On
basis?
average, Rosary Army would make around $750 a year.
Yeah, that's pretty good. That's
Well,
a significant donation.
Yeah. I mean, it was like, it's a wonderful thing. It was just a little bit of like, oh, look, we have our $150 quarterly payout or a $200 quarterly payout. And it was such a mutually beneficial arrangement. It's like if you knew that you could support a charity, you kind of liked shopping in that marketplace because it had that extra little bit of charitable sort of association to your purchase. And that made you feel good. And consumers like to feel good when they buy something. If they can do two good things with their act, all the better. And now that they're taking it away, I'm just going to feel like I'm just shopping now. Like, oh, I'm just a vacuous knot of consumerism and I don't like this. And I don't know.
It brings up a lot of other questions, and you could tie it into the AI side of things too, of like just how much are we consuming? All the streaming services, all the other services that we're signed up for, but then it pulls back to, but we're in a world where that's the way things are now. So how much do we resist it? We have no local grocery stores. They're all chain grocery stores. We have no local department stores. They're all chain department stores. So whether you get in your car and drive to them or you get them from Amazon, anymore, at least where we live, within, I'd say, 45 minutes of where we live, there are no other options. Now, there are some options. So like if you want to buy board games, we have a few board game stores around us. Rather than buying it from Amazon, you can go to that store and support those. You're going to pay full price. You're never going to get a discount. But there's, what if you do away with the Amazon Prime charge that you pay every year for free shipping?
Which has steadily been increased.
It's been
very
increased,
expensive now.
And then you have to almost calculate, am I saving enough in shipping? I feel like we do because we purchase a lot of things for the ministry, and we just grab it off of Amazon and the shipping is covered. But there are options, right? And so that kind of, I don't know where we're going to go with it, but it ties into the whole conversation of the morality of AI. I think it's worthwhile, especially we're coming up on Lent, right? We're coming up on Lent. We're going to be, the first thing we're going to be doing for School of Mary. We plan in late February 20th, we're going to be launching our first walkthrough of preparation for total consecration with St. Louis de Marie de Montfort. There's opportunity for us to make sacrifices and changes within ourselves and our behaviors. And so I feel like during Lent, I find myself thinking, maybe this year, what kind of different types of sacrifice could we make? Could I give up streaming services altogether for Lent? Could I give up shopping online for a month and only purchase things? From I don't know if that would be spiritually valuable. That's kind of the other thing. I'm like, well, is it or is it? So I don't know.
Well, I mean, I think it's a really tough question to ask yourself. Can you quit Amazon? That's a tough thing to quit when it has been fully integrated into our life. And in many ways, it really helped us all survive the early pandemic year when we were all stuck in our homes and we still needed things. And we were so grateful that we were able to buy essential goods and products through Amazon. But I am deeply concerned, I won't use the word terrified, but I am concerned that if we try to quit Amazon now,
they'll come and get us. The drones will attack.
No. Just to try to buy these physical products in real life is increasingly difficult. I was shopping with Lily the other day at a chain grocery store, and I kind of marveled at the fact that, Lily, look at the aisles. Do you not see what I see?
They're emptied?
They're less product choice, more empty shelves. So I can't find what I want. But then it kind of goes back to, why were you there? Because you want something. A lot of times there is a need, but a lot of times we buy things because we just want them. And so we turn the want into a need. And so we really have to ask ourselves almost a deeper, more fundamental question. What are we really wanting, and how important is that thing anyway? Can you live without it? Probably yes. And I don't know about you. I mean, I know that the thought of an EMP might terrify you.
No, actually it doesn't.
But
I like
think
the idea if everyone gets wiped out, I feel like we're on a level playing field.
Even plane, yeah.
So if an electromagnetic pulse wipes out all technology, we're all farmers now, my friend. I mean, even Monsanto is going to be out of business, and they probably just heard me say that, and now I'm targeted by their artificial intelligence is going to be coming after me.
But like, I even started conditioning myself to read with an amber book light because it mimics firelight.
Yeah,
and
think about that. Think about that.
And it's still
a light,
a battery operated, and then I'm going to have to charge it for power. So I realize all of that is fleeting, and I'm kind of curious what this other world would be, because I think as a Gen Xer, we would survive. Like, I think we would do okay. I think Gen Xers and higher, we got this in the bag. We can survive. We can wait. We can survive in silence, and it's not going to make us go crazy. I do fear that the younger kids would go bonkers because they're used to noise. That's their comfort zone. They need that constant digital stimuli going into their brain, or they don't know what to do with themselves. They don't know how to face themselves anymore. So it's kind of a interesting prospect.
So here's some encouragement. I saw this, and I had to switch glasses so I can actually read it for you. I saw this yesterday in the Office of Readings in the Liturgy of the Hours, and I figure if we don't talk about it in this show, even though we're quickly approaching an hour, that I will forget to share this later on. But we have to always tether everything to Christ. We have to tether everything to our Savior.
We have to be connected to him.
He is our Savior. Yeah. He is our Redeemer. And so all these things that are trying to oppress us or constrict us, he is the one who will redeem us. The original oppressor, the original constrictor, the original evil intelligence was defeated by Jesus dying on the cross and raising from the dead and defeating death so that we too might be risen with him when we die with him in our baptisms. But this was in the second reading on Thursday's readings from Liturgy of the Hours, and is by a bishop I'd never heard of before named Fulgentius of Ruspe. And again, this was a bishop. I don't really know the timeline for this, but the whole idea, the summary of it in one line is that Christ lives forever to make intercession for us. But what I loved about this is, and the reason why I wanted to share it was I thought this is one of the better explanations I've ever read in terms of the Trinity and understanding the relationship of Father, Son, Holy Spirit, and understand their love for us and our need to be tethered to them.
You're about to explain the Holy Trinity, the mystery?
I am, and so bear with me because I am going to read a bit of this, but this is nice. Fulgentius of Ruspe, and if I can remember, I'll put the words up on the screen for those of you who are watching this on YouTube. But he says, notice at the conclusion of our prayer, we never say through the Holy Spirit, but rather through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord. Through the mystery of the incarnation, Jesus Christ became man, the mediator of God and man. He is a priest forever, according to the order of Melchizedek. By shedding his own blood, he entered once and for all into the holy places. He did not enter a place made by human hands, a mere type of the true one, but he entered heaven itself, where he is at God's right hand interceding for us. Quite correctly, the church continues to reflect this mystery in her prayer. He goes on and says, this mystery of Jesus Christ, the high priest, is reflected in the Apostle Paul's statement, through him then, let us always offer the sacrifice of praise to God, the fruit of lips that profess belief in his name. We were once enemies of the Father, but have been reconciled through the death of Christ. Through him, then, we offer our sacrifice of praise, our prayer to God. He became our offering to the Father, and through him, our offering is now acceptable. It is for this reason that Peter the Apostle urges us to be built up as living stones into a spiritual house, a holy priesthood to offer spiritual sacrifices pleasing to God through Jesus Christ. This then is the reason why we offer prayer to God our Father, but through Jesus Christ our Lord. When we speak of Christ's priesthood, what else do we mean than the incarnation? Through this mystery, that's the mystery of the incarnation, right? Through this mystery, the Son of God, though his state was divine, emptied himself to assume the condition of a slave. As a slave, he humbled himself, and in obedience he even accepted death. Even though he possessed equality with the Father, he became a little less than the angels, always equal to the Father. The Son became a little less because he became a man. Christ lowered himself when he emptied himself to assume the condition of a slave. And I want to read that part again. Always equal to the Father, the Son became a little less because he became a man. Christ lowered himself when he emptied himself to assume the condition of a slave. By this condition, Christ, the only begotten Son of God, though himself ever remaining God, became a priest. To him, along with the Father, we offer our sacrifice. And I would say our sacrifices, our struggles. Yet through him, the sacrifice we now offer, is holy, living, and pleasing to God. Indeed, if Christ had not sacrificed himself for us, we could not offer any sacrifice. For it is in him that our human nature becomes a redemptive offering. When we offer our prayers through him, our priest, we confess that Christ truly possesses the flesh of our race. Clearly, the apostle refers to this when he says, every high priest is taken from among men. He is appointed to act on behalf of these same men in their relationship to God. He is to offer gifts and sacrifices to God. And he goes on to say, we do not, however, only say, your Son, when we conclude our prayer. We also say, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit. In this way, we commemorate the natural unity of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. It is clear, then, that the Christ who exercises a priestly role on our behalf is the same Christ who enjoys a natural unity and equality with the Father and the Holy Spirit. And I just thought it was a beautiful thing. I wanted to share it. Thoughts?
I'm still trying to absorb what you said.
Yeah, it's a lot. There was a lot there.
There was a lot
sure.
there.
But the idea, though, again, Christ emptied himself so that all this stuff, this artificial intelligence or whatever the things that may oppress us in time, Christ emptied himself and became slave, became one of us, so that we don't have to worry about captivity. And so often we talk about in our own prayers when we're trying to trust God, we're trying to make decisions about going down different pathways, that we may go down the pathway that we think is the right one, and we're trying to tether ourselves to God, and we are concerned that we're going to make the wrong decision. Yesterday we launched YouTube stories. I don't know if it's going to work or not. I just signed up for a course, or not a course, but a service that's going to cost us, $1,100 a year to run this thing. And I don't know if it's going to be the right one, but we're tethered to Christ. And we know that even when we make the wrong decision, that later on down the road, God can course correct. And we've shared this in our own lives, in our own adventures in imperfect living. We've made several moves that we thought were the right moves. We moved across the country two times before we finally came back to Georgia. Thought both those moves were the right ones. God did things in the midst of those moves, but they ended up being very painful and very difficult situations that led us to have to go through a lot of healing and introspection, but they ultimately brought us here. I could not have written 10 years ago that we would be able to focus so fully on Rosary Army and so fully on developing School of Mary and so fully on sharing our faith with so many people as we are right now. When we started on a journey 10 years ago, literally 10 years ago this week, I left Georgia originally and went to Colorado to start a job. The last 10 years, this journey that we've been on, it's been absolutely amazing. God can course correct anything. And so as we start going down the paths, it doesn't mean that we just get in the car, like I said last week. We don't get in a car and just go 120 miles an hour because God can course correct whatever. But we have to trust that if we are tethered to God and if we are seeking God's will in all things, that when we are going down pathways that may not yield the most fruit, that even if bad things happen, that God can bring the most glorious things out of that. Philippians chapter 4 tells us to give thanks in all things, all circumstances, both the good and the bad, and that the peace of Christ will dwell within us when we do so. So we need to hold on to those things, remember those things, and keep them at the forefront of all that we do. Thank you to all of you who have subscribed to our new YouTube channel on Rosary Army. You just go to youtube.com/Rosary Army, hit that subscribe button, like notifications, and you'll find out whenever we're going to launch one of these things. You'll find out whenever we pray a live rosary. We did one the other night. Some of you got to join us. Thank you for that. We hope to be doing more and more of these things to bring you together with other people in the Rosary Army community, including our School of Mary, which will be launching very soon. If you want to be on School of Mary's early wait list, go over to schoolofmary.com and put your name and email address in there, and we'll notify you as soon as we're ready to start bringing people into the new school, which will be starting up very, very soon. We're super excited for that. Thank you to all of you who subscribe and leave comments and leave reviews to help other people discover the work that we're doing. And thank you especially to our donors of Rosary Army, rosaryarmy.com/donate if you want to help out. Thank you for being here with us. Jennifer, I'll give you the last word. Anything that you want to add on all the stuff that we talked about? Are we good to go?
I think we're good to go. We've given our viewers and listeners, I think, a lot to think about in terms of their intelligence and where God factors into all of that. Remember, God created you beautifully, and you have access always to Him. Just pray. Pray your rosary every day. Do what you have to do to be holy. Read good literature. Read good spiritual works. Stay tethered to Christ, and you will do well.
Thanks to all of you for being here. We'll talk to you again in a few days. Love you so much. God bless you, folks.
Bye.